Clint Eastwood named the 7 most beautiful women in Hollywood. Before he became a legendary director, before the Oscars and the iconic roles, Clint Eastwood was simply a man with an eye for beauty. Not the manufactured kind that came from Hollywood's assembly line, the kind that changes the temperature of a room. In rare interviews throughout his career, Eastwood revealed the 7 women who left him speechless, the faces that defined an era of unmatched Hollywood glamour. What made them beautiful in his eyes wasn't just symmetry or youth, it was something more dangerous, more permanent, the quality that separates pretty faces from unforgettable ones. Today, we reveal Eastwood's personal list of the most beautiful women to ever grace the silver screen, and why each one earned a place in Hollywood's most selective pantheon.
I was kind of going to do your show, because I didn't know if I'd have time before I fled off to London, but I...
7. Raquel Welch. Eastwood never worked with her, but he didn't need to. He once said, "She walked in like she didn't need to say a word, and no one wanted her to." Her face, her figure, her fire. She was Hollywood's storm in heels. Born Jo Raquel Tejada in Chicago, 1940, Welch wasn't just another pretty face in the Hollywood crowd. She was a force of nature who redefined what it meant to be a sex symbol in the 1960s. Most women who became symbols in those days were blonde and seemingly available, Eastwood noted in a 1984 interview. Raquel was neither. There was something untouchable about her, something dangerous. That untouchable quality first exploded into the public consciousness with 1966's 1 Million Years BC. The prehistoric fantasy featured Welch in a now iconic deerskin bikini that launched 1,000 posters and changed her life forever. But Eastwood saw beyond the pinup. "What impressed me about Raquel wasn't the obvious," he recalled. "It was how she carried herself. Like royalty, who could also break your jaw if necessary." Their paths crossed several times at industry events throughout the 1970s. According to those present, Eastwood would fall uncharacteristically quiet in her presence. "She had a quality I've rarely seen," he admitted years later. Complete self-possession. She owned her beauty instead of being owned by it. Welch fought fiercely against being typecast, taking roles in controversial films like Myra Breckinridge and the roller derby drama Kansas City Bomber. She won a Golden Globe for The Three Musketeers, proving her talents extended beyond her looks. Yet it was her physical presence that remained seared in Eastwood's memory. "Some beautiful women seem to apologize for it," he observed. Raquel wore hers like armor. There was something almost warrior-like about her, beauty as a weapon rather than a gift. When asked what made Welch different from other bombshells of the era, Eastwood's answer was simple. "Most beautiful women want you to like them." Raquel never seemed to care one way or the other. That's power. By the 1980s, when other sex symbols had faded, Welch remained formidable. She launched successful businesses, continued acting, and maintained her iconic status well into her later years. "That's the test of true beauty," Eastwood noted in 2000. Does it hold up when youth is gone? With Raquel, the answer was always yes. Though they never collaborated on film, Eastwood admitted keeping a mental list of actresses he wished he'd worked with. Welch consistently ranked near the top. "Some people just don't need the right lighting or the right camera angle," he said. "They're magnetic without trying." That was Raquel. Always. But even Raquel's undeniable presence couldn't compete with the quiet revolution of our next entry, a woman who redefined elegance for an entire generation.
Pour notre film et pour la Croix-Rouge.
Permettez-moi de vous dire, Audrey Hepburn, que vous parlez très...
6. Audrey Hepburn. Not his type on paper, but she made the list anyway. Clint called her the definition of class, with a face made for silence. He admired her grace, restraint, and timeless femininity. She didn't need to seduce, she just existed. Audrey Hepburn represented everything that shouldn't have appealed to a young Clint Eastwood. While he was building his career on rugged masculinity and laconic toughness, she embodied delicate refinement and European sophistication, yet he couldn't look away. "I remember seeing Roman Holiday when I was still figuring out who I wanted to be in this business," Eastwood recalled in 1976. "I was struck by how she didn't seem to be trying. Everyone else was acting. She just was." Born in Belgium in 1929, Hepburn survived the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands before emerging as ballet dancer and eventual actress. Her breakthrough in Roman Holiday, 1953, won her an Academy Award and introduced the world to a new kind of beauty, gamine, sophisticated, and utterly distinct from the voluptuous icons of the era. "She was the opposite of what Hollywood thought a woman should be," Eastwood noted. "Too thin, too European, too elegant, but you couldn't take your eyes off her. Their paths crossed only twice, once at a studio function in 1962 and years later at an Academy Awards ceremony. Eastwood, normally confident to the point of bravado, admitted to feeling uncharacteristically nervous in her presence. There was something almost otherworldly about her, he said, like she was made of finer materials than the rest of us. What particularly impressed him was Hepburn's unique ability to project strength through fragility, a paradox that fascinated the actor known for portraying unyielding toughness. Most actors try to seem stronger than they are, he observed. She had the confidence to appear vulnerable, which takes a different kind of strength altogether. Her performances in classics like Breakfast at Tiffany's, My Fair Lady, and Wait Until Dark showcased a range that Eastwood deeply respected, but it was her work in The Nun's Story that he cited as her most beautiful performance. That film stripped away everything external, he said. No glamorous costumes or famous jewelry, just her face, expressing things most actors couldn't convey with 1,000 words. When Hepburn gradually stepped away from Hollywood to focus on humanitarian work with UNICEF, Eastwood's admiration only grew. True beauty reveals itself in what you do when the cameras stop rolling, he remarked after her death in 1993. By that measure, she might have been the most beautiful person in Hollywood history. What separated Hepburn from her contemporaries, in Eastwood's estimation, was her ability to project internal richness rather than external appeal. Most beautiful women make you think about them, he once said. Audrey made you think about yourself, who you could be, how you could behave with more grace. That's a rare gift. Years later, when asked about actresses he wished modern Hollywood would emulate, Hepburn's name was always first on his lips. We don't make them like that anymore, he lamented in 2008. Someone who understood that mystery is more powerful than exposure, who knew that what you don't reveal is as important as what you do. While Hepburn represented restraint and elegance, our next beauty embodied something altogether different, a sensuality so powerful it crossed continents and redefined Hollywood's notion of female power.
Our network, and it is called Aurora. Now, you haven't done a film in some time.
5. Sophia Loren, powerful, bold, unapologetically sensual. Clint once said, she was dangerous in the best possible way. Her beauty wasn't fragile, it was dominant. Where Audrey Hepburn whispered, Sophia Loren commanded. Born Sophia Villani Ciccolone in Rome 1934, Loren emerged from the poverty of war-torn Italy to become an international symbol of earthy, mature femininity, a stark contrast to the youthful ingenues Hollywood typically celebrated. American beauty in the 50s and 60s was about looking like a girl, Eastwood observed in 1971. Sophia was all woman. There was nothing girlish about her appeal. Eastwood first encountered Loren at the 1965 Cannes Film Festival. Though their interaction was brief, her impact was permanent. Some people fill a room gradually, he recalled. Sophia kicked the door down, not with effort, but with a kind of confident sensuality that made everyone else seem like they were half asleep. What struck Eastwood most wasn't just Loren's legendary physical attributes, but the intelligence and humor that animated them. Beauty without brains is boring after 5 minutes, he noted. Sophia's eyes revealed a mind working behind them, always thinking, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Loren's path to stardom came through her collaborations with director Vittorio De Sica, culminating in her Oscar-winning performance in Two Women, 1960, the first Academy Award given to an actor for a foreign language performance. That performance showed what made her truly beautiful, Eastwood said. The willingness to be ugly when the role demanded it, to show anger, desperation, rage, emotions most beautiful women avoid because they're not flattering. While many Hollywood sex symbols projected availability, Eastwood noted that Loren's appeal came from the opposite quality, a sense that she was always slightly beyond reach. She wasn't asking for approval, he observed. That's what made her magnetic. Most beautiful women seem to be asking, "Do you think I'm beautiful?" Sophia already knew the answer. When they encountered each other again at a Hollywood function in the late 1970s, Eastwood admitted to being just as intimidated as he had been years earlier. Some women become less imposing as they age, he said. Sophia only became more so. Her beauty matured like wine, more complex, more interesting with each passing year. What particularly impressed Eastwood was Loren's refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations. She maintained her Italian identity, her accent, her connections to European cinema, even as she conquered American audiences. She didn't come to Hollywood to be remade in its image, he noted. She came to remake Hollywood's image of what a beautiful woman could be. When asked what made Lauren unique among the great beauties he'd encountered, Eastwood pointed to her comfort with her own power. "Most beautiful women are taught to make men feel strong," he said. "Sophia made you feel like you needed to prove you were strong enough for her. That's a whole different kind of appeal, the kind that lasts for decades." While Lauren embodied a bold, assertive femininity, our next entry captivated Eastwood with qualities almost impossible to define, an ethereal presence that haunted him long after their brief encounter.
Un choc après l'autre, le choc de quitter ma famille, le choc d'être dans un milieu que je connais.
4. Jean Seberg, quiet, ethereal, American in name, French in spirit. Clint met her early in his career and was stunned. He later said, "She looked like a ghost, and I couldn't stop watching her." Some beauties announce themselves, others slip in unnoticed, then prove impossible to forget. Jean Seberg belonged to the second category. Born in Iowa in 1938, Seberg's journey to iconic status began when director Otto Preminger selected her from 18,000 hopefuls to play Joan of Arc in his 1957 film Saint Joan. Though the film failed commercially, it launched a career that would bridge Hollywood and the French New Wave. Eastwood encountered Seberg in 1968 at a small industry gathering in Paris. He was still primarily known for his TV western Rawhide and his work in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. She was an established star, having become an icon of French cinema in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. "She was unlike anyone I'd ever met in Hollywood," Eastwood recalled years later. "There was something almost translucent about her, like you could see right through to something essential. What captivated him wasn't conventional beauty, but something far more elusive. Jean had this quality that made you feel like she might just disappear if you looked away," he said. "Not fragile exactly, more like not quite of this world." Her signature pixie haircut, which she first adopted for Breathless and maintained throughout much of her career, became one of cinema's most copied looks. But Eastwood noted that her appeal went far beyond the superficial. "The haircut became famous, but it was what was happening behind her eyes that you couldn't look away from," he observed. "There was both intelligence and sadness there, a combination that's mesmerizing on camera." Their conversation that evening in Paris was brief, but left a lasting impression. Seberg spoke of her work with Godard, her love of France, and her increasingly complex relationship with America. Eastwood, still finding his voice as an actor, mainly listened. "Sometimes you meet someone and immediately know they're carrying something heavy," he later reflected. Jean had that quality, beauty with a weight to it. What Eastwood couldn't have known was the extent of the troubles haunting Seberg. Her support for civil rights causes had made her a target of FBI surveillance. Director J. Edgar Hoover had personally ordered agents to neutralize her, leading to a smear campaign that would contribute to her eventual tragic suicide in 1979. "Learning what was happening to her behind the scenes made me understand that haunted quality," Eastwood said in a rare 1990s interview about Seberg. "She was being hunted, literally, by her own government. How do you live with that kind of pressure and still create art?" But she did. Seberg's beauty, in Eastwood's estimation, was inseparable from her vulnerability and the sadness that seemed to follow her. "Some faces just stick with you," he said. "Decades later, I can still see her exactly as she was that night in Paris. Some beauty doesn't fade because it wasn't about youth in the first place. It was about something more essential." While Seberg represented a fragile, ephemeral beauty, our next entry embodied something altogether different. A classical elegance combined with an inner strength that commanded Eastwood's lifelong admiration.
And the people that look for stories. And she lived in that building, and he told her that my parents...
3. Ingrid Bergman, Hollywood royalty, and one of Eastwood's lifelong screen crushes. He praised her as the woman who looked the same in every light, and never needed help hitting her mark. There was weight behind her beauty, and Clint respected that most. In a town built on illusion, Ingrid Bergman stood for something else entirely, unvarnished authenticity. Born in Stockholm in 1915, Bergman brought a European sophistication to Hollywood that transformed American cinema in the 1940s. Her performances in classics like Casablanca, Notorious, and Spellbound established her as not just a great beauty, but one of the finest actresses of her generation. Eastwood never worked with Bergman, but he encountered her at a Directors Guild event in 1978, 2 years before her death from breast cancer. Despite being in declining health, she made an impression he would describe decades later. "Some stars get smaller when you meet them in person," he recalled in 2000. Ingrid was exactly as substantial in life as she was on screen. Nothing artificial about her, nothing hiding behind makeup or careful lighting. What particularly struck Eastwood was Bergman's comfort in her own skin, a quality he found all too rare in Hollywood. Most actresses of that era were terrified of aging, he noted. Ingrid seemed to welcome it. Each line earned, each year visible. There's tremendous beauty in that kind of courage. Bergman's career was nearly derailed by scandal when she left her husband and daughter for Italian director Roberto Rossellini in 1950. The affair, which produced 3 children, including actress Isabella Rossellini, made her persona non grata in Hollywood for years. Eastwood, never one to judge personal choices harshly, admired how she weathered the controversy. She paid a heavy price for living honestly, he said, but she never apologized for following her heart. That kind of integrity is its own kind of beauty. What most impressed him about Bergman wasn't just her classical features, but how she used them in service of characters rather than vanity. Watch Autumn Sonata, he advised in a 1992 interview. She plays a concert pianist who's essentially destroyed her daughter's life. No vanity, no attempt to seem likable, just truth. Most beautiful women are terrified of playing unlikable characters. Ingrid sought them out. Bergman's approach to beauty aligned with Eastwood's own preference for natural authenticity over Hollywood artifice. She was revolutionary without trying to be, he observed. In an era when actresses wore heavy makeup and carefully controlled their images, she insisted on being photographed without makeup, in natural light. She trusted her face to tell the story. When asked what made Bergman's beauty endure through decades and across generations of filmgoers, Eastwood pointed to her willingness to reveal herself completely. Most movie stars show you a carefully constructed version of themselves, he said. Ingrid gave you everything. Her joy, her pain, her strength, her weakness. There's something deeply beautiful about that kind of honesty. While Bergman represented a beauty built on authenticity and artistic integrity, our next entry was someone Eastwood knew far more intimately. A woman whose beauty became inextricably linked with complex personal history and professional collaboration.
Elements, and I keep saying it has a little something for everybody, but it's a detective story, basically. It has a lot of action in it, but it's also a love story, which is interesting.
2. Sandra Locke. Their relationship was long, toxic, and unforgettable. He cast her in 6 films, dated her for over a decade, and through everything, Clint admitted, I never got over how she looked at me when the cameras weren't rolling. She wasn't just beautiful, she haunted him. Some beauty remains at a safe distance, admired on screen or in passing encounters. Sandra Locke's beauty became entangled with Eastwood's life in ways both creative and destructive. Born in 1944 in Tennessee, Locke was an Academy Award nominee for her performance in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, 1968, before she met Eastwood on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales in 1975. What followed was a personal and professional partnership spanning 6 films and nearly 14 years. There was something about her that the camera couldn't fully capture, Eastwood said years after their relationship ended. A kind of wounded intensity that came through her eyes. You couldn't look away from it. Their first collaboration showed Eastwood a different kind of beauty than he was accustomed to in Hollywood, something more vulnerable and raw than the polished starlets of the studio system. Sandra didn't try to be beautiful in the conventional sense, he noted during their years together. Her beauty came from somewhere deeper, a willingness to expose herself emotionally that was almost uncomfortable to watch sometimes. Throughout their relationship, Eastwood cast Locke in films including The Gauntlet, Every Which Way But Loose, Bronco Billy, Any Which Way You Can, and Sudden Impact. Their on-screen chemistry was palpable, with Locke often playing characters whose toughness masked profound vulnerability. Working with someone you're involved with personally changes everything, Eastwood reflected later. The camera captures currents that exist between you that no acting could create. That's what I saw when I looked at our films together. Something real happening between these characters because something real was happening between us. The relationship ended acrimoniously in 1989, leading to highly publicized legal battles that revealed the darker side of their years together. Yet even after the lawsuits and public recriminations, Eastwood acknowledged the indelible impact Locke had made on him. Certain people mark you, he said simply in a rare comment years later. They become part of your formation as a person. For better or worse, Sandra was one of those people for me. What made Locke's beauty distinctive in Eastwood's eyes was its inseparability from emotional complexity. "Hollywood is full of beautiful faces that don't tell you anything," he once observed. "Sandra's face told you everything. Too much sometimes. That's a different kind of beauty. The kind that gets under your skin and stays there." Despite their troubled history, Eastwood included Locke on his list of Hollywood's most beautiful women, a testament to the impact she had made beyond their personal difficulties. "Beauty isn't always comfortable," he noted philosophically. "Sometimes it's challenging, disturbing even, but it still affects you, maybe even more deeply." While Locke represented a beauty intertwined with personal history, our final entry, Eastwood's choice for the most beautiful woman in Hollywood history, embodied something universal, something that transcended personal connection to become cultural iconography.
Now, aren't you ashamed of those suspicions you had about me?
Terribly.
1. Marilyn Monroe. She topped his list for a reason. Clint Eastwood called her the most dangerous kind of beautiful, the kind that makes you forget where you are. They never shared a film, but he never stopped mentioning her. The way she moved, the way she glowed, the way every man in the room became irrelevant. She was the face of temptation, and Clint never denied it. Some beauty belongs to its era. Marilyn Monroe's transcends time. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, Monroe transformed herself from orphaned child and factory worker into the defining sex symbol of the 20th century, a metamorphosis so complete it still serves as the template for manufactured celebrity. Yet what captivated Eastwood wasn't the careful construction of her image, but the vulnerability that image couldn't quite conceal. There was something almost painful about watching her, he said in 1970, 8 years after her death, like seeing someone with no skin, everything exposed, everything visible. Eastwood was still a contract player at Universal when he encountered Monroe at a studio commissary in the late 1950s. Though their interaction was brief, it left an impression that never faded. "She had this quality I've never seen before or since," he recalled. "A kind of luminosity, like she was lit from within, not just beautiful, but radiating something that made everything around her seem dimmer." What struck him most wasn't her famous figure or platinum hair, but something more elusive in her presence. "You hear about charisma, but until you've been in a room with someone who truly has it, you don't understand what it means," he said. "With Marilyn, you felt this current in the air, this electric charge that had nothing to do with fame and everything to do with some essential quality she possessed." While Monroe's beauty made her famous, Eastwood believed it was her talent that made her significant. He frequently cited her performances in The Misfits, Bus Stop, and Some Like It Hot as evidence of depths most critics were slow to acknowledge. "The tragedy was that no one took her seriously as an actress until it was too late," he observed. "She had this remarkable instrument, not just her looks, but her ability to project vulnerability and humor simultaneously. That's incredibly rare." Monroe's death in 1962, at age 36, only intensified her mystique. For Eastwood, her passing represented not just a personal tragedy, but a cultural loss. "Some talents need time to fully reveal themselves," he said. "I always wonder what kind of performances we might have seen from her in her 40s and 50s, when the pressure to be Marilyn Monroe might have eased and the actress could have fully emerged." What separated Monroe from other beautiful women of her era, in Eastwood's estimation, was the contradiction she embodied, simultaneously innocent and sensual, powerful and vulnerable, constructed and authentic. "Most sex symbols were one-dimensional," he noted. "Marilyn contained multitudes. That's why she endures while others are forgotten." When asked why he considered Monroe the most beautiful woman in Hollywood history, despite the many extraordinary women he'd worked with directly, Eastwood's answer was philosophical. "The greatest beauty creates a kind of yearning," he said. "Not just physical desire, but something deeper, a recognition of something fleeting and precious. Marilyn had that quality in abundance. She made you aware of beauty's transience, which only made it more powerful." Decades after her death, Eastwood still kept a famous Tom Kelly photograph of Monroe, the red velvet nude shot that launched her career, in his office at Malpaso Productions. "It reminds me of something essential about this business," he explained. "Behind every iconic image is a real person, complicated, struggling, human." Marilyn's beauty wasn't just about perfect features. It was about what showed through them, the humanity, the humor, the hurt. That's what made her unforgettable.